Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from, I don't even have a word for it. I'm in Ethiopia. Uh, I don't know, adequate Addis Ababa? It's been a very long trip. I was in South Africa, in lovely Cape Town. I went to Zanzibar, went to Burundi, and now I'm here in Ethiopia. And this is the first time where I've had somewhat decent internet, at least decent enough to try a live stream. And I apologize for that. Internet's a little difficult in Africa from time to time, but we managed to get a signal out. And I miss you. I miss the community. I miss talking to you guys. I miss giving you an update. I really miss the dialogue. I miss the AMAs. It's my favorite thing in the entire world. And so hopefully y'all can hear me well. Hopefully you can see me well. But let's get this party on the road. All right. First, a brief update. We had a gargantuan buildup in the month of September for the launch of Alonzo and then the Cardano summit. The summit was an overwhelming success. Over 100,000 people registered and attended the digital event. Thousands attended the physical events. And we had a chance to really showcase, I think, over 200 or 300 presentations, somewhere around there. Really just the heart of the Cardano community and how large things had become. Alonzo was a great success as a hard fork. There were a few missing features that had to be added as well, and we added them in October. And now we're in the final stages of the integration of the Plutus application backend. Now, what's going to happen with the Plutus application backend is that you go from the assembly experience of Plutus to the high-level language experience of Plutus and all the connecting tissue. And as a consequence, a lot of these applications that are being built, like Sunday Swap and Meld and so forth, they're going to start coming in and they're going to start deploying. So that means that that whole stack is going to be under a lot of scrutiny, stress, and there's going to be a great update and iteration cycle. So between the months of November and February with the Babbage hard fork, there's going to be a boatload of changes and refinements and optimizations and so forth. There's a layered execution strategy with Cardano. So John Woods, the lead technical architect of Cardano, he's focused right now for the next 6 months on his work stream with optimization, improvements of performance, more throughput, and scaling up system parameters. Okay, so things like K, things like the block size, all of that stuff. Reducing the memory footprint, perhaps by more than 50%. Litany of changes with how the data structures work in the system. UTXO HD, where there's a hybrid storage of memory and hard drive, and these things for the UTXO. Script compression. There's dozens of things that are done in that agenda. There's other parties that are going to come in. They're going to optimize a lot of the Haskell code as well because it was written once for correctness, and now it needs to be optimized for performance. So that's one layer of workstream. Another layer of workstream is Mithril, and that's underway. Huge amount of work. Idyllic Labs and Galwa are working diligently on that, along with our engineers. And that's the light client solution. So that's full node security with light client experience. It also means parallel validation of epochs, so much faster Daedalus. Another effort is improving the experience of Daedalus, the full node, and also adding in light client support on our end, IO, as well as improving the light client ecosystem overall. So that's another work stream that's going on. Okay, then there's the Hydra work stream that's going on. And if you guys attended the Cardano Summit, you would have seen the Hydra work stream and where we're at. And the goal is to have something by Q1 that's a good beta that then can be attached to commercial partners like DEXs and other such things so that they can begin exploring how one would offload traffic into the Hydra network for both payments and for state, so for smart contracts. So there's all that. There's Mamba. And our current deadlines and timetables show that we think we can have a beta of that experience for developers to begin playing with as early as January. Okay, and Mamba adds in EVM support. It also adds in Yella support. Okay, so that's another layer that's going on. Governance is another layer that's going on. So Catalyst is about to become recursive over the next few funds. Each fund, Catalyst becomes more recursive. What that effectively means is that the community sets the parameters for the next round, and every aspect of Catalyst is completely community controlled. There is the emergence of Cardano, the open source project. So basically, it goes from a collection of custodial entities writing code to an open source ecosystem with many contributors across the board. There are over 12 development companies right now. Eventually, there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of contributors like the Linux kernel has. So there's a series of processes that are underway to do that, to move from separate commercial code from reference code and further iterate, refine the CIP process, including all the on-chain stuff for voting. Okay, so that's another thread that's going on. There's the certification process. So when you write a smart contract, verify that the smart contract is correct by construction and certify it against the proof standards. That's another thread that's going on. There's all the identity integrations that you may have noticed. FATF and Treasury Department and others are starting to really dial up the DeFi regulation. That means compliance is coming. So you need an identity solution to accommodate that. So full Prism integration into the Cardano stack, that's been underway because of the Ministry of Education deal, the Boost Mobile deal, 13 million users there that are being brought into the ecosystem. So that's another thread that's going on. The dApp Store, that's another thread that's been going on. We presented at the Cardano Summit these things. So, there's so many moving pieces, and I could keep adding and adding and adding, but it's getting to a point it would take 2 hours to talk about all this stuff. And there's more than, I think, 300-400 people that are executing. The foundation is also scaling up dramatically. They announced at the summit a $25 million budget for 2022. And that means they're going to hire and maintain a staff of almost 100 people to take over and augment and add to the ecosystem that's already there. There's also a lot of negotiations, discussions about Mergo creating at least $100 million fund that is Africa focused to start building out an ecosystem there to augment, complement what we're doing with the $6 million Africa fund and what IO is doing with the C fund. Catalyst, over 150 proposals were funded in Fund 6. Largest fund yet. They keep growing. The size is doubling again. $8 million Fund 7 starting in November. Okay, that's another thread that's going on. You see, so it's a very busy ecosystem now, and there's many, many people waking up in many walks of life that are working extremely hard at growing, iterating, refining this ecosystem. Now, with success comes criticism. We've noticed post-conference a fairly significant wave of social media criticism that's come. Usually it stems around price, and that's to be expected. There's usually a big buildup and some draw off, and some people think that that's the worst thing in the world. I do not care, and I frankly don't read it, don't engage with it, interface with it, any of these things. And no one, I think, in the ecosystem really cares at this point. Every single metric of Cardano is looking real strong, every metric. And, this Africa tour, we've met now with 2 heads of state, the president of Burundi and the president of Zanzibar. Zanzibar is politically semi-autonomous. Burundi is obviously its own nation. And there's overwhelming demand for what Cardano offers in the e-governance domain and the identity domain. And there's a lot of excitement about Catalyst in particular. We've met with a lot of startup accelerators and incubators. There's a huge flow of businesses that want to build on Cardano, that actually think it's a good idea. And we're here. We probably are going to have dozens of deals that come out of all the meetings that we've had here in Africa, and we're struggling to find the resources to accommodate them. And that's just our reality as one company, one member of the Cardano ecosystem. We see the dApps being built on Cardano. Many of them are now funded. For example, the World Mobile project over in Zanzibar has $40 million of capital. They are deploying a nation-scale ISP with Cardano at the bedrock of it that will cover 1.8 million people. And I expect that rollout from touring the sites and looking at their technology to take about 12 to 24 months. We're already in discussions about how we can port that to Kenya and examine other jurisdictions like Burundi, which only at the moment has 2.6% connectivity. Train's moving. And there's great ventures that are exploring these things, like KBI, for example, Promote Viswana's venture. There's others like DC Spark, another company that's run by Nico and Seba, and they've just announced the EVM sidechain in the ecosystem, independent of the Mamba sidechain. So people are already starting to write Solidity code that can be executed and fueled and powered by ADA. Okay, there's tens of thousands of NFTs that have been issued over the last 2 months, and there are over $100 million, I think, of economic activity surrounding the NFTs. So apparently our native asset standard is quite popular there, and it's growing in scope. So that's just a brief update. It's hard to completely stay connected to everything because we're doing so much work here in Africa. It's currently 9:42 p.m. We got up at 5 a.m. Every day's been this way, and we've been pushing and pushing and pushing. Minister this, minister that, company this, company that, ambassador this, ambassador that. Some of these ambassadors really do enjoy drinking. And so I packed an extra liver just to make sure I could get through it. And obviously, being in Africa, some of the food sometimes does cause some issues. And we've had a few people already down on the trip with food poisoning, but we've managed to push and power our way through. And we're real excited for the remaining 2 countries in the trip. All right, it's an AMA. Let's get to your questions, kids. Hey, Charles, how are we doing on the ERC20 converter? Go IOHK, go SNet. So SingularityNet is in the process of migration. Ben and his team, of course, will give you guys a more comprehensive update. ERC20 converter has 2 targets. One is the main chain. Now that Plutus is here, we can actually do a lot of cool stuff with that. The other is going to be Mamba. So the ERC20 converter team is going to be shaken up and augmented a little bit. We're going to add more resources to it. And we're going to have a really nice 2-way bridge tool for Mamba because you're going from ERC20 to ERC20 Solidity to Solidity. So it's much easier to do that. ERC20 to the native asset standard, the first example of that is going to be SingularityNet. And that's going to basically be a case study. And then we can kind of work our way backwards to a more generic framework for it. The long-term goal is automation and bridging. So it's easy to move between and wrap assets and so forth. And we view it as a nice commercial tool. So when people come and they want to migrate, there's a process, a team, and a collection of competencies there. Egypt updates. Egypt is the end of my trip. I'll be spending some good time there, and I'll certainly tweet a lot of stuff and talk to you guys about it. Hey, Charles, when can we see the PIB go live? My best estimates I've gotten being here talking to the team is November. And I believe those estimates are accurate. So we'll see. I believe November, but stuff happens. Blah, blah, blah to you. You're the one in my AMA. And of course, we still have the paint chip brigade. Charles, how is Hydra going? Hydra is going very well. I mentioned it in the introduction. Huge amount of work is going into it, and we're going to keep adding resources to Hydra. And we've been trying to identify some teams so we can accelerate and parallelize the work stream because it's such a high commercial priority. And it's going to be very important that we be able to offload a large amount of the transaction traffic that's going to come from all of the apps that are coming. As the PAB comes online, Cardano is going to get hammered by an enormous amount of traffic. And that's fun. But, obviously you need to segregate, and especially for microtransactions. And so especially the stuff with World Mobile and the telecommunications traffic that's coming, because it's 1.8 million users, frequent use every single day, wallet on their phone, this type of stuff. So Hydra is a necessity for that. So it's very important that we get that out in a timely manner. Still a little bit of research going on there, but I think we're converging to a pretty good idea of a 1.0. Joined late, but did you talk about the release of JED? That's now Cody project. So we're just kind of writing some reference stuff down, but they're going to take that and commercialize it. And we're real glad that they're doing that. It's an exciting project, and it's an example of one of the members of the Cardano ecosystem. And they've done a lot of really cool things, Cody, and they're led by a great team over in Israel. we don't have financial relationship in that respect. We just kind of pulled a Hyperloop where we designed something and then open sourced it, released it, and then let competing teams take it and build it. And if Jet is a successful model, we fully anticipate that there's going to be a half dozen or more independent implementations of it. Hi, Charles. Thanks for the update. How many employees does Cardano actually have? It's a protocol. How many employees does TCP/IP have? I don't really understand how this works. My company has 600 people, but as I mentioned, there's 12 companies developing Cardano software. So there's probably several hundred people that wake up every day just on the software side for implementing things for core infrastructure. When new Light Wallet from IOG, I cannot wait for it. Alex Appledorn will have monthly updates for you guys on progress. We have a 4 to 6 week sprint. We're moving our way through, and it's very important, very high priority that we get that out. Mithril is definitely something that we're going to launch the Light Wallet with, so you'll get full node security with Light Wallet. Any news on Possessia? We're going to Kenya, and we're going to talk to them in person there. And we might even do a video together. At the very least, we'll tweet some stuff, and we'll write a blog post about the things we're doing. Our first pilot's going to be a $150,000 microfinance loan, but we've actually been meeting with a lot of MFIs here throughout Africa, and we're talking about blockchain-based reputation system and peer-to-peer lending specifically for microfinance. So it's a very high priority for ours. And Possessia, I think, is a perfect partner for it. They have a great CEO. They have great people, good team on the ground, good connections throughout Kenya, and pretty good market depth. Charles, there's some fun about increasing block size. It doesn't really increase the amount of Plutus smart contracts per block. Could you please talk about that? It's a lie. If you increase the raw amount of storage the block has, you of course can have more scripts in that block. Now, there are some limitations about the total amount of computations per block, and that obviously can be increased as well. But then there's always a question about network propagation based on those parameters. So it's a complex issue. We released a blog post about it, but I'm not worried at all about throughput in Cardano. In fact, I think the extended UTXO model is massively parallelizable. At the end of the day, there's going to be outsourceable computation long-term, 3-5 years into the future. You're going to have a situation where 99% of your computing is done off-chain, and it's checked with proofs on-chain that it was done correctly, and it's done in a distributed way. So Alice does a different computation than Bob, than a different computation than Eric and Jim and Jane and Bill. Okay, so that can be done privately. It can be done with different trust models, but at the end of the day, as long as you have a proof that the outsourceable computation was done correctly, that's all that matters. And that's what's checked on chain. So you have a scarce resource on chain, unlimited distributed resources off chain. That's the model that makes sense. There's other models, but you're boiling the ocean if you try to chase global state. It makes no sense at all. But there's just enormous amounts of fun. Many people don't even understand how extended UTXO works. So and they criticize it. And I'm like, okay, good for them. So it's an interesting question of how many transactions per second. So Plutus scripts are fundamentally different than a value transfer, or like a transaction to mint an NFT token or these types of things. So, an average transaction, realistically speaking, for most network conditions with cryptocurrencies, if you're sitting in the 50 to 100 TPS for those average types of things, you're probably doing okay for daily volume. Now, it would be nice to get the core chain to around a 500 to 1,000 TPS. If you do a lot of stuff about increasing the block size, adding augmentations to the network stack with things like fountain codes or other types of things to allow you to propagate things a little bit smarter, some compression magic, and then you add in input endorsers for some parallelism and block processing. I think that you probably can get to that sweet spot of about 500 to 1,000 for the core layer. Getting beyond that for any single sharded architecture is not going to happen in a distributed system. You'll see all these people, they say 50,000, 100,000. Well, they're really centralizing things. And second, they're offloading computation in some sort of clever way of batching. And that's effectively a roll-up or a layer 2 solution. So you can do that, and Cardano is designed for that, with Hydra in one direction and the side chains in the other direction. And also, if you have a lot of load balancing concerns, so if you have an EVM sidechain, you can always spin up multiple EVM sidechains. And using cryptographic sortition, you can actually run those with a faster BFT protocol than the base Ouroboros protocol. And that's effectively what we're doing with Mamba, but just in a single sharded instance. And then we can obviously enhance and add more magic to that. And there's papers like Rapid Chain that kind of show how to do that. So I don't think there's a TPS problem. And anybody who claims that, they just don't understand what they're talking about. It's more of a question of what is the off-chain, what is the on-chain component, and how are you constructing the root of trust of the system? And it's a really complex application-specific question. So for example, at DEX, you're concerned about things like front running. You're concerned about global availability of the contents of the book. Does somebody have a view of the order book before somebody else, and can they take advantage of that? Or does somebody, because of their position in the network, have the ability to execute an order before someone else does? We even see this with centralized exchanges with high frequency trading. So that requires a different model of trust and operation, usually using commitments and other things, than, let's say, an Oracle, which has a very different model of trust. You're periodically injecting information into the system. You have some notion of veracity of the information that's being injected into the system. So everything is a snowflake, and your TPS is just a means to an end. And usually there's so much more to the story about that. But then people use it as a marketing metric, and as a consequence, it becomes a measuring contest, but it's meaningless. A dump truck probably has 1,000 horsepower, but it's completely different than a Koenigsegg, even though the raw metric is the same. They do different things, and they have different utility. Now, this is a good question right here. Paper wallet with staking capability. So this is a high priority of mine. Partial delegation and separation of the cold and hot infrastructure. So proxy keys. They've been quantified. We've discussed them. We had to make priorities. We chose smart contracts as a priority over some of the Shelley backlog work that's slated for delivery around the same time as Genesis. So that's definitely coming. It's a very high priority. So how it's going to work is you create a paper wallet, and then that has the spending keys. You delegate to a proxy key that Daedalus, Yoroi, or some other infrastructure manages. You can actively manage all your delegation preferences there. If the hot infrastructure gets compromised, you just take your paper wallet again. You link it to a new proxy key, a new transaction, and then it's done. So there's many ways to do that. When you have a hardware device, you can sign a transaction on it. So Ledger and Trezor, you can do that. Paper, there does have to be some copying of the private key into a memory on the hot device while it's signing a transaction. To do that, usually you do that at the time of creation of the paper wallet. Now, we have had some discussions about, could we actually do the signing for a proxy transaction in trusted hardware? So if you have Intel SGX or ARM Trust Zone or AMD's variant of a trusted execution environment, could you in your TPM sign the transaction, then broadcast that? So you're using that in the memory of the TPM, and it never touches the operating system. So effectively, you're emulating a Ledger or Trezor with the paper wallet. So there's some discussion about how would that be done. It's not a super high priority. The highest priority I have right now is just simply segregation of infrastructure, separating the cold from the hot infrastructure, and a notion of proxy keys for both voting and for delegation. And I'd like to improve privacy at the same time with that. So I'd like to use some sort of construct that when you delegate to a proxy key, you can't link back to the value keys, so that you have anonymous staking. I think it would be a little bit better for the ecosystem for that. So we're having discussions about how to do that. There's a lot of constructs to put in. Mithril might help. Okay. Hello, Charles. You look tired. Yes, Africa has been long. It's a little bit of everything. Hi, Charles. When will you speak with Eric Weinstein? I think a conversation would be super productive. I did have a call with Eric. We spent about 45 minutes going back and forth. We spent about 30 of those 45 minutes talking about math stuff. He's a very, very smart guy, very interesting guy. And I think it would be really fun to have a podcast conversation with him one of these days. We just haven't had the time to meet up. But we did connect over private messages with Twitter, and he gave me his phone number, and I just called him, and we had a real nice call. And he's a super nice guy. And as I said, super smart guy. So we'll get around to it. It's on the list. It's just Africa tour, Africa tour, Africa tour. Hi, Charles. I don't know if I understood right, but you anticipate the world mobile first infrastructure will be built in 2 years. Yeah, so there's already world mobile infrastructure in Zanzibar. There's 2 locations. So there's a school that I visited, and it has about 340 girls there. And then there is a fish market in Stone Town in Zanzibar where they basically built these towers. So there's kind of multi-layer architecture there. So the microwave towers do air fiber and microwave, and they broadcast on the, I think, 200 megahertz spectrum. And then the other thing they've been exploring for is Wi-Fi and mesh networks, and that's your low-cost connectivity. And then they're looking at balloons to create broadcast across the entire island. I think the balloon broadcast spectrum is 600 megahertz, and I think that's 4G. So there's a lot of discussions they're having right now about how to accommodate that. But Zanzibar in particular is very keen about the blue economy. So that's fish in the ocean. 60% of the GDP of Zanzibar is related to aquaculture, so seaweed production, fish, all this stuff, the maintenance of boats, rah, rah, rah. The problem is that you can't really govern or manage illegal fishing or the blue economy unless you have connectivity with the vessels. Only 2% of the vessels that fish are internet enabled or have motility, meaning they have a motor. So they're paddle boats or sails. They go out. So you get overfishing in the areas where they tend to spawn and hatch. So it's a government priority to invest in the blue economy over the next 24 months. And Zanzibar, to actually get the boats to go further out than 5 miles, and then also get them connected to the internet somehow. Project Loon from Google is something that World Mobile is looking into, using some form of tethered balloon to broadcast a radius around the sea and the island itself. And then a network of microwave towers that use mesh nets to kind of connect people locally. Where it's really interesting is the idea of cooperative ownership of the mesh networks and the tower infrastructure. So the idea would be that as people use the Wi-Fi, then they pay for it with some form of a token. Over time, they actually get equity inside the tower. And over time, the tower becomes owned by the community that uses it instead of the ISP. So you create basically micro ISP cooperatives, and they become small businesses that broadcast things. So this is an open business model, and they're moving very rapidly, and they have a great team there, and they have wonderful political access. We met with the president of Zanzibar and all the ministers who are relevant. So there's no regulatory burden for this rollout, but there is still some issue with political autonomy between Tanzania and Zanzibar. Because I believe Tanzania controls the broadcast space for 4G. So there's some work that has to be done between those 2 areas. And Tanzania controls the monetary policy. So can't quite do a CBDC in Zanzibar quite yet, but maybe the special economic zone can be done. But yeah, 2 years, a lot of progress. And we're going to keep dialing in because there's questions about capacity exchange for bandwidth, how to build that cooperative model of the ownership of the towers, meshnet protocols. We do a lot of network stuff, and there's tons of things to think about. And years ago, we talked about RENA, recursive internetwork architecture. We never lost the passion for RENA. And if you're building all this network infrastructure, that's actually a really good place to introduce it. And a lot can be done there that can fix fundamental problems that the internet has. Where are smart contracts? They're live. They're running. There are smart contracts on Cardano right now. Grow a fucking brain. Charles, do you like watches like Patek Philippe? I'm a Jaeger-LeCoultre fan, and I'm also a Vacheron Constantin fan. I really like the skeletonization of Vacheron Constantin. And Jaeger-LeCoultre, the gyro tourbillon is just amazing. Jacques Dro is also a great because I love the automatons that they make, the little bird repeater and so forth. So these are all just beautiful watches, and they're works of art and just real fun to look at. Peugeot also has the Altoplano, which is one of the thinnest watches ever made, mechanical watches ever made that's automatic. In fact, they have to use platinum for the flywheels because the gold is not heavy enough for it. This is something the community, you guys have to do a little bit better job at. I am Charles Hoskinson. I run input output. I'm not Cardano, and I'm not every single project on Cardano. Every day I get an email from somebody who has an issue with Yoroi or one of the Cardano ecosystem projects. We don't run Sunday Swap. We're not a member of the team. We haven't invested in them. We have no formal relationship. We love the fact they're building on Cardano, but we don't know. We don't know what their roadmap is, when they're launching, these types of things. So it's really important that people understand how to separate us from the ecosystem and understand that the ecosystem is not a position where there are hundreds of applications, hundreds of independent projects. There's over 300 funded endeavors on Catalyst that are independent of IO. We haven't ever asked for Catalyst money. So all of those things in Catalyst have no direct commercial relationship with us. So I don't know the deadlines. You can ask me, and you're just like asking some random guy on the street. No one tells me. I find out when you guys find out. So please do take that under advisement. Hi, Charles. Any relationship with Nervos going? Any update on the Force Bridge? Yeah, we're working with them through the UTXO Alliance. There's also a lot of discussions about what's going on with an account emulation on top of extended UTXO that's being done by Mutual Knowledge Systems. My CTO, Roman, is much more connected to that particular project than I am, but I get briefs on it about every month, and things are coming along. And another idiot, coin burning. So it's an honest question to the audience. Why do people think it's possible to burn ADA? It's not. It's not. I own some ADA. You guys have some ADA. To burn ADA, you physically have to forcibly confiscate ADA from somebody and destroy it. As for changing the monetary policy of Cardano, there's only ever going to be 45 billion ADA. That's like going to Bitcoin and saying, well, there's 21 million Bitcoin theoretical maximum. Let's go take that to 19 billion. You're destroying the integrity of the entire cryptocurrency's monetary policy by tinkering with a monetary policy that was set years ago. And that social contract is built by 4 years of purchasing decisions of people entering the ecosystem. So I don't understand why people keep thinking a burn is possible or desirable. And in every case a burn has happened, it has not resulted, in my knowledge, like Stellar, when they destroyed a huge amount of reserve supply. In that case, it was held by a foundation. It didn't actually do anything for the underlying price of the asset. So I don't understand it. I just don't. The monetary policy is the monetary policy. No one can change it. It's there. And until the governance system gets so sophisticated that a supermajority of the people can vote on something like that, there's not going to be any attempt to even modify, change the inflation rate at all. So the only way to burn ADA is either to have a person voluntarily do it, and so they decide to destroy their own money. They put $1 on the table, set it on fire, or to hack someone and steal their money somehow and then destroy their money. In both cases, you're advocating basically theft or stupidity for your own enrichment. So I don't understand it. I really don't. Maybe the audience here can help me, but it's been a bugbear of mine for a long time, and it just keeps coming up again and again, and articles come out, and it's a fixed supply, guys. It's like Bitcoin. That monetary policy makes sense. There's 12 years of history there. It's created $2 trillion of wealth. It created an entire ecosystem. Why should there be deviation and manipulation for short-term speculators who don't care at all about the ecosystem? That's not the point. It's a social contract. Code is law. Once you set these things, you don't change these things unless there's a constitutional amendment process and a staged process that's ubiquitously agreed for doing so. And burning is just against everything that I stand for as a person, and I have no control or choice. Even if I wanted to do it, there's no mechanism in Cardano to enable that. It's fixed like Bitcoin is. I just don't get it. Charles is very rude. I don't get it. You guys ask the questions, I give you the answers. I give you an honest answer. I'm not here to protect your feelings, but I'm sure we can build a safe space for you. No Ergo announcements at the summit. I think Ergo was at the Cardano summit because they do a bunch of stuff. But remember, it's independent cryptocurrency, so they do their own thing. And they've been building a lot of infrastructure that's quite useful for Cardano, like Ergo DEX and so forth. And we've certainly learned a lot about it. This is a great question. Where can I get access to Plutus Dev? So I've had several conversations with the Cardano Foundation about the idea of a Cardano certified solutions provider or a certified Plutus application developer. So we need some form of accreditation certification system, because what we did on the IO side is we ran 2 training cohorts for Plutus pioneers. We did the capstone. Over 3,000 people were trained. There were a lot of really cool and interesting projects. We built a nice little development community, and there's a great Discord there. And that's going to grow really quickly. And there's also the Prism Pioneers program. So there's an SDK for Prism, and that's growing really fast. The other thing we did is we hired 8 development companies just to come in and write stuff and learn how Plutus works. And that was twofold. One, we needed a feedback loop to test the Plutus application backend and an end-to-end infrastructure. And 2, we wanted to build up solutions providers that you guys could hire and basically, write Plutus applications, or Catalyst-funded ventures could partner with to augment their development teams and help them scale up. And working with us, they would develop a lot of competency in the developing model. So you're kind of training the trainers. You're training the developers to in turn go and do stuff. So look for Fred Gregard and what the foundation is going to announce for 2022. I know they have some form of a certification and training agenda, and they have some form of an accreditation agenda. And hopefully we can formalize that a little bit more. We'll see what happens there. We're going to continue growing the Plutus Pioneers program. The PAB is coming out imminently. And when that happens, there's going to be a big feedback loop. And I expect up until Babbage, there's going to be a lot of burn-in. Post Babbage in February, probably do another cohort and train another large group. We're going to run another Africa class as well. So Lars is going to go live in Ghana, I believe in January, and they're going to train a big cohort of Haskell developers there. That's going to be the largest class that we've ever done. And of course, they're going to be pushed into the Plutus domain. So there's a burgeoning ecosystem that's kind of growing up with this stuff. And it's being co-developed at the same time with the tooling, at the same time with the certification processes, both on people, organizations, and software. And for great ecosystems, you need to do that. So time. When will coins actually start deploying on blockchain? I mean, what about SingularityNet? That's an example. All the NFTs, those are examples. Pay attention. There's a lot of coins. World Mobile is another example. $40 million coin. What can you do? You can't really do much, can you? Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord. What are your thoughts on Michael Saylor's influence on the crypto space? He is full maximalist and spreads false information. Do you see this level of institutional influence as a growth obstacle? No, I don't really at all. I mean, if you look at the trends, there's been a systematic movement of value from the proof of work side of the equation to aggregate proof of stake. The entire maximalist argument is proof of stake is evil, it's central banking, it's a Ponzi scheme, it doesn't work, it's perpetual motion. If all the value flows from one to the other, and that system is sustainable and stable, and it has the benefit of being millions of times more power efficient, much higher throughput, and programmability, it's really morally hard to keep arguing for the past. You're at some point, or like, what was that guy, Paul Bunyan, or he was a railroad guy, who he was competing against the mechanized railroads, and he ended up getting himself killed by working too hard. Laying railroad tracks. That's where we're at, and if Mike wants to run around and tell us how great Bitcoin is and how everything else is a scam and it's bad, I mean, it's his prerogative. He's putting his money where his mouth is. He's invested hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in Bitcoin. And he's a real bright guy, and I respect his work in the education sector. And I frankly don't feel that he's creating problems in the dialogue. He's just expressing his philosophical beliefs. I do believe in general that Bitcoin maximalism has created an intolerable level of toxicity that is very damaging to the overall adoption of cryptocurrencies and for new people entering the space. When you have guys like Lex Friedman or Eric Weinstein or others, they come on in and they're intellectually curious and they're asking just basic questions of why do people care about cryptocurrencies? And suddenly they trip up on a holy war of proof of work versus proof of stake, Bitcoin versus the altcoin space, maximalism. And the minute they say one thing or the other, they either get brutally attacked or, loving adulation. That's not a healthy dynamic. That's not good. It's not like when you download Google Chrome as a web browser, suddenly vagabonds from Mozilla Firefox show up and break your mailbox, or they call you an evil person, or you're stupid or something like that. It's like we don't have that level of polarization with anything else, but yet with the crypto space, we seem to have descended that way. People talk their book. Mike Novogratz talks his book. Tim Draper talks his book. Mike Saylor talks his book, and they're going to do that, as does Mark Cuban. And people take their bets. I believe firmly in Cardano because of the roadmap we have, and because we built it to be something that's around in decades. And we also are doing the work of going to Africa, going to the developing world, bringing in millions to tens of millions of users, many of which are unconnected, many of which have intermittent power, many of which have feature phones, not even smartphones. And we've gotten to the point where we're talking to cell phone manufacturers and considering even buying cell phone manufacturers. We basically helped build up an ISP that's deploying internet over millions of people. We're talking to ATM manufacturers to create cash in, cash out points. We're talking to MFIs, microfinance institutions, about creating inflows of direct foreign investment and blockchain-based identity. We're propagating blockchain credentials across the entire continent of Africa. We're even talking about setting up the African Credential Alliance. All of these things are necessary to build an ecosystem, and they take years to decades to fully realize. Now, they will bring in tens to hundreds of millions of high-value users over time into the Cardano ecosystem because it's been bespoke built for that. Not the Bitcoin ecosystem, not the Ethereum ecosystem, not the Solana ecosystem. And because all of that is vertically integrated, and those on and off ramps are B2G2C plays, and the government is bringing them in, they're not going anywhere. They're going to Cardano. So I'm patient. I'm a young guy. I'm 33. The ecosystem is young, and the technology is young. And what matters is the evolution, and what matters is the foundations. And when you bet on Bitcoin, you're betting on 12-year-old technology that doesn't really upgrade very quickly, that has a cult behind it about proof of work, that refuses to acknowledge any innovation anywhere else in the space. When you bet on Cardano, you're betting on an ecosystem that is evolving at a very rapid pace, that has a multi-paradigm computing model. So you use different smart contract stacks and can admit side chains and so forth, that is built with formal methods and peer review. So there's an enormous amount of foresight that goes into the rollout and deployment of the technology. That's built with the community, very collaborative, dozen development companies, and it's turning into a larger open source project that has $1.4 billion of capital behind it in the largest decentralized treasury in the world, which is controlled by the community itself, and has high growth metrics year by year. Just as an example, the last 3 epochs have had more transaction volume in them than every single transaction in 2017 and 2018 combined. So we're growing rapidly as an ecosystem. When you bet on Cardano, that's what you're betting on, is that trend, and saying, okay, if we keep that trend and these things keep happening, and that ecosystem development keeps happening with a foundation that's politically neutral in Switzerland with an independent board, with $1 billion of capital behind it, a decentralized grant agency that goes out and injects capital into all kinds of things to build up the ecosystem, a very driven business strategy that has all kinds of VC at all kinds of different levels, and great developers and great engineers and great scientists and a big decentralized brain. Where will that movement be taken in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years? That's what I would bet on, because I don't see any of those things with Bitcoin. I see this bizarre behavior where you just believe if you buy something, you do no work, no one does any work, and automatically you wake up and everything is worth 10 times more. And there's no desire of social responsibility and commitment, investment there. Just buy Bitcoin and you're done. Here at Cardano, ADA is the beginning. There's catalyst, there's expert participation, there's delegation, there's voting, there's all these things you do. There's this huge community, and then you have problems you want to solve. And so you start building and deploying things, and you have dApps, and there's this vibrant ecosystem there. And it's you to decide that. There are so many stake pool operators. They donate food to kids in Argentina. They give clean drinking water to people in Nigeria. They electrify people's homes, give them lights for the first time in their life in Kenya. They do things in Vietnam. They do things in Indonesia. They make this protocol their own, and they feel a social responsibility to it. With Bitcoin, I don't see a lot of that in that maximalist mindset. I just see a very closed-minded thing. It wasn't that way always. When I first entered the Bitcoin space many years ago in 2011, I saw really amazing people who were very evangelistic, and they felt a social and moral responsibility for propagating Bitcoin. Roger Ver, for example, before the whole split, he would make it his mission in life to make as many businesses as possible except Bitcoin. You get his haircut, you tell the barber you need to take Bitcoin. You go to the coffee shop, he wouldn't leave until the lady took Bitcoin. Go and eat at a restaurant, he wouldn't leave until they took Bitcoin. He was always selling, always hustling, always pushing Bitcoin. And that was the culture and the ethos. I don't see that culture and ethos from the rank and file people. Maybe I'm just blind to it now. And I really don't appreciate the brutal personal attacks that they make. It's not, we disagree with you, you are a scammer, you're a liar, you're an evil person. And I just don't see how that adds any value. Now, has Mike contributed to that? His statements are his statements. I don't feel it's particularly hostile. He's never really said anything about us, and that's fine. But I do believe maximalism in general as a concept is a road to nowhere, and it's a religion at this point. Yeah, this is a great example. This is a good question. Charles, what are your thoughts on meme coins like Doge and SHIB being in the top 10? So all you guys running around who are obsessed with price, obsessed with burn ADA, why is the price falling? Why is this doing? I've been in this space for so long. I've watched everything. When Bitcoin was under $1, we traded it on spreadsheets and we used for a PayPal account it was violation of the end user license agreement. Everybody did it in the cryptocurrency space. I think you used PayPal to send money to Mt. Cox. Okay. It was just like nobody cared because it was a fun little thing. It was like buying, a Jordan's stone off of a Diablo 2 account or something like that. That was the same category it was in. And then it went all the way up to $30. Wow. And it fell down to $4. Then it went from $4 to $250 and $250 down to $80. Then $80 up to $1,200, $1,200, then $1,200 all the way down to $250. It stagnated there for a while. Then it went all the way up to $20,000. Then it collapsed all the way down to $4,000. Then $4,000 to $64,000. And then, collapsed to more. And then it went back up. The markets are crazy and they value things in very crazy ways. And I don't understand it. I really don't. And I know for a fact any single person on the protocol development side who chases market appreciation through gimmicks and marketing and all these other things, first, they seldom accomplish it in the long term. And they sound a lot like the BitConnect guys. And second, the markets are very fickle. Take a Wayback Machine snapshot, January 1st, of CoinMarketCap from the beginning of the website to today, and look at the top 10 of who was in the top 10, who was in the top 10, who was in the top 10. And you see how much it changes. So they have their exits and their entrances, and people flip each other all the time. The people who stay are the people who are committed to a mission and actually want to do something with the platform. They have real answers for what is the use and utility? Why is this thing here? What's the point of this stuff? So I'll give you a very good example of a very real business problem. Facebook recently announced that they're changing the name of the company from Facebook to Meta because they're obsessed with this thing called the metaverse. So there's a book that was published in 2019. It's called The Spatial Web. And there's a Spatial Web Foundation and all these other guys. And it talks a lot about the spatial web. What the hell is the spatial web? Okay. Put your hats on. It's going to be a little bit of a journey. So in the beginning, we had PCs, and PCs ran programs, and programs connect to databases. That's your model. Then suddenly the internet comes around, and PCs begin getting networked together, and now you have servers, and you have websites, browsers, okay? And, you have this notion of a server database, okay? Then you move to mobile computing, and then mobile computing has apps, and then apps have the cloud. Yay, cloud. Okay, that's Web 2.0. And then Web 3.0, they say, what the hell is that? And so the original idea was this notion of a semantic web. So instead of just information, images, text, videos, pictures, you have contextual information. So the canonical example is I go into a website about gardening and farming, and I see the word greenhouse. The website, the AI is sophisticated enough to understand that greenhouse there is talking about a structure with glass that keeps the heat in and allows plants to grow and has constant humidity, and so, or whatever the humidity is for the plants, as opposed to a website about painting homes and it mentions greenhouse and they're actually talking about a physical house that's green. Okay. There's ambiguity unless you have context. The semantic web would understand the difference between these two things. The spatial web is this idea that you take that base layer, okay, and you pull it up And now you have the internet of everything. People, places, things, locations, all those things together become liquid, and they get merged into the internet and become semantically aware. And so your interfaces change. You go from web browser or a mobile interface to augmented reality and virtual reality and mixed reality. Your computing logic changes fundamentally. So you go from programs to web applications to mobile applications to smart contracts and AI and these types of things. And your data layer changes tremendously. You go from a database to a server to the cloud to all of those things plus blockchain. Okay. So when you talk about that in its totality, the metaverse is probably going to be worth more than the physical world because there's more of them. And the majority of human beings by 2050 will work in the digital world, not the physical world. And a lot of physical jobs are going to be automated, and robots are going to live there and do those things. So we as humans are going to live in the digital virtual world, and we're going to have all kinds of virtual world. Virtual real estate at some point will be worth as much as, if not more so, than physical real estate. It's an insane concept, but that's the case. So this is where you ask yourself, well, why do NFTs matter? Why does identity matter? Cryptographically secure identity and NFTs create scarcity and uniqueness and the access on off ramps for these things, and creates identity for avatars inside the system. So Zuckerberg's got this. He's a very smart guy, and he's got a giant Fortune 500 company behind him. He sees the future, and he knows we're going to be living in Ready Player One, and he knows that IoT is going to bathe everything. They even have paint that has sensors in it. So you paint a surface, and then what you can do is put your phone down on it, and the sensors get activated through near-field communication, and then suddenly the state of the table is knowable. And with augmented reality, then you can see all kinds of things about the table and so forth. Like if you're at a restaurant, the menu will just automatically appear. If you're a waitress serving a restaurant with Apple Glass, their AR product that's coming out in a few years, the tables you haven't visited in a while will be red. The tables that you have visited will be green. And if somebody is visibly looking like they want to order or something, or they could just signal to you, like a little asterisk will appear or something. Okay, this is the AR, VR world that we live in. You need a control layer to sort all that stuff out. And either it's totally centralized, controlled by a small group of people, and that's a super fucking dystopian Black Mirror world, or the spatial web is going to be open and free. And every time we rebuild the web, we have a chance to do that. When we went from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 to now Web 3.0, we're moving in that direction. So when you ask yourself, okay, does Cardano have a shot of providing something interesting there? Oh, sure. We have DIDs with the Tala Prism. We have the native asset standard for metadata. We sure as hell can build a spatial web protocol stack that can live as a sidechain of Cardano. And once you have that, you could talk about basically being the platform that ensures the property rights, the privacy rights, and the movement of value for the entire virtual world, which will be worth more than the physical world, tens of trillions of dollars. To have those capabilities and a route to such a thing in a 5, 10, 15-year time horizon, if the community wants to do that, is an example of use and utility and vision. And seeing that Fortune 500 companies are chasing that, and you can offer a decentralized version of that, is an example of the utility of blockchain. And why blockchain? Because the only other way to do it is to put somebody in charge, which means Mark Zuckerberg will basically own your digital avatar, your digital identity, and decide your property rights in the virtual world with no election, and he's king for life. Blockchain is the only other way to do that. It's not optional, okay? And no government's going to protect you in this respect, because even if it does, do you really want China or the United States of America or Germany being in total control forever of the virtual world? And maybe some international body will sort it out. How do they deal with global warming or any of these other existential transnational problems? Private standards of blockchain trust the math, not the people. When I look at Doge and SHIB, where's the vision there? That's one problem that I've just articulated for you guys, that when you really start thinking it through, looking at the spatial web and where that's going and how transformative that's going to be for you. And by 2050, the impact that's going to have on humanity, they offer no solutions or approaches to deal with that. Cardano has an ability to do that if we so choose as an ecosystem. quickly. And it's just something that can be added into that protocol stack. So there's real value there. And that's just one dimension. Then there's the transformation of DeFi to RealFi. And RealFi is like DeFi plus regulation, plus identity, plus metadata, plus certification, plus standards, these types of things, right? So that's a whole new category right there, RealFi. And by the way, we're bringing tens of millions of people with MFI plays and identity plays and other things into the cryptocurrency space. And their on-ramp is going to be Cardano for that type of stuff. And why do they do it? Because do you guys know what people pay for loans here in Ethiopia? First, there's a 30% inflation rate. 30%. You think, oh, it's bad in America. It's 30% here. Banks lend out to good, creditable MFIs at 18%. The average interest rates are at least 22, 24%. And the black market rates can go over 100% to 150%. In some of the high unemployment areas, 600% per annum. That's the reality they live today. Solving that one problem transforms the lives of 120 million people just here in the country I currently am in. And tomorrow I'm going to be in a new country, and there's 100 million people there who need that too. Okay, solving that particular problem, having a solution stack. You need cash in, cash out. You need integration with trusted hardware and ATMs. You need stable coins. You need DEXs to move value around. You need blockchain-based identity systems. You need some sophisticated layer 2 privacy solutions to be able to route all these things through. You need marketplaces to form. They need to be liquid. They need to have browser-based interfaces. These types. It's a huge stack, the MFI stack. That's a product category. It takes years to pursue it. And it's a subcategory of RealFi, right? Lots of stuff there. So real use and utility. If you have vision, whether it be metaverse vision or RealFi vision or governance as a service vision, whatever the hell it is, property rights, data rights, privacy rights, these types of things for millions to billions of people produce and preserve trillions of dollars of collective value. The point of these protocols is they're competing to provide a philosophy for the world for these things. And if we get there, we change the world. We make it a lot better. If we don't get there, by default, it goes to the FANGs. Facebook owns it. Apple owns it. Google owns it. Netflix owns it. Spotify owns it. They all have their own control in their own little areas, and they do their own little things. And we just have to accept a small group of plutocrats and oligarchs basically run the world and get to decide what your world is. I don't see that vision when people buy Doge SHIB because I don't see the conversation. In Cardano, I see the conversation. I see people talking about the future. How do we make the world a better place? How do we build applications? I see the same thing in the Ethereum space. With Doge, I see how do I make money? How do I get a 10x? How do I get a 100x? So do I think that's going to be around in 10 years? No, absolutely not. Because there's nothing there to keep it up and keep it permanent. It's the conversation, the belief, the applications, the use and utility, the entrance into these emerging markets that change everything. And if you can't do that, well then, meh. But that's one man's opinion. And I'm sure tomorrow we're going to get brutalized by those two communities. How do I get value by doing nothing? Go work for the government. Chrono Cross or Chrono Trigger? Well, Chrono Trigger has the better soundtrack. Hey, Charles, what do you think of pure proof of stake? No forking, super low fees. Yeah, that's marketing, guys. No such thing. You always have forks in these networks. There's no notion of no forks. There's always forks. And in terms of super low fees, I mean, all proof of stake protocols have. And yes, you do need delegation. Point of forks is, do you have a structured way of deciding on them, executing them, enforcing compliance with them? Any information about a Cardano wallet plug-in into the Web3 protocol? Yeah, it's going to have to happen at some point. That's the whole interoperability play. So there's Rosetta support, which gives us exchange connections. And then there's going to be some ISO standards that come in for central bank connections. And then, yeah, obviously Web3 has to be brought into the stack. It can be done through Mamba. The advantage of Mamba is it's an EVM clone, so that sidechain can connect all the Ethereum infrastructure. So you get all that for free. And because Mamba is connected to Cardano, transitivity says you're now connected to Web3. So you have a bridge for it, and then it's very easy for software to make that seamless. So yeah, all that stuff works well. We need a proof of system for Plutus contracts. Boy, do we ever. That's part of the certification chain. There's a lot of discussion about formal methods in Plutus, and that's going to be a big conversation in 2022. I like Lean. I put $20 million of my own money into Lean for math, and we'll get there. We'll get there. Which country has been most receptive so far in Africa? Burundi, by far. Met with the president, talked to everybody there. They're definitely ready and willing to innovate, and they're pretty tired of the status quo. And I think that we're cautiously optimistic, but the ministers definitely are very open. There's a lot of challenges there, and it's a country that definitely needs many different things to work together to get to the next level. And blockchain isn't the only thing. 11% of the country's got electricity, 89% doesn't. Only 2.6% of the country is connected to the internet. But those things can be changed very quickly, and they can become competitive advantages if they're done correctly. For example, Burundi could be the first country in the world to be carbon neutral. And 100% of its energy is generated by alternative energy, and its entire energy grid is carbon neutral because you're building it from scratch. And that can be done very quickly, too. Same for connectivity, using microwave towers and broadcast balloons for 4G. I think you probably could cover all of Burundi very quickly, especially if there's rural ownership of the microwave towers and mesh networks. Talk with Jordan Peterson. Not yet, but I really would love to. And I heard he had a lot of health problems in the last few years, and he's getting a lot better. And now he's starting to get back into the fold. And it would be a lot of fun to have a long philosophical conversation with Jordan Peterson. It's part of my bucket list. And I think within the next 3 to 5 years, God willing, we're going to find a way to make that happen. And now that meme happened while I was on vacation and abroad, but I saw it. Can't say it because the censors on Facebook and YouTube will go ahead and take the video down. So I'll just leave that up there because I don't think the AI is sophisticated enough to be able to screen read that, use optical character recognition, and understand what you've said there, sir. But I saw it. I saw it. Yeah. Not going to talk about it, though. Will Cardano work with Helium through Dish? That'd be a lot of fun. We knew about Freedom Fi, and actually I think we have a lot to offer on that side. And both relationships, Dish, Helium, Freedom Fi, Cardano, KBI, they're all percolating, and it's all about how do you build the telco of the future. And so we're all aligned in that respect. Where is Logan at? We left him in Colorado. He's too valuable. Have you ever been to Prague? Yes, I have been. Beautiful, beautiful place. The city of clock towers, one of my favorite cities. Yeah, that's a routing protocol right there. Can other Hydra heads and channels talk with each other? And it's on the roadmap, and there's plenty of ways to do that. The question is it better to route through the base Cardano network protocol and build a mini protocol, or does it make more sense to create a synchronized layer 2 protocol, kind of like what the block relays did with the Corello and the Falcon relay networks for block miners? I think a synchronized layer 2 network makes more sense because of the nature of who's deploying the Hydra heads. You can always route it through the layer 1 protocol, but it's going to have higher latency. The Mithril certificate construction routing protocol is probably reusable infrastructure, and I suspect there's a lot of overlap in the design requirements there with what the Hydra heads are going to do for batching and load balancing and routing and these types of things. Charles, do you have a successor in the place in the event something happens to you? I wish you all the best. P.S. Charles, you remind me of the villain Cause from the movie Sneakers. I went on vacation for 2 weeks. No one missed me. Cardano kept coming along. The ecosystem kept building along and so forth. Guys, I don't run Cardano. I run my own company, and we have succession planning there and checks and balances and controls, and we build up stuff for it. But, if I survive, I die, and it doesn't really matter. Cardano's decentralized. I'd miss all you guys. I think some people would miss me, but then life goes on. Apple doesn't need Steve Jobs anymore. Disney doesn't need Walt anymore. My job was to set everything up and teach people what we could do, the art of the possible, and get the party started, get people talking to each other. And like any good host, you don't inject yourself in the conversations after the conversations start. You're just making sure the music's good, the drinks are flowing, and it's a comfortable environment, and that you're hosting something great for the flow of ideas and the construction of friendships and so forth. And that's what we did. And now there's millions of people working together, having conversations. All the blocks at Cardano are made by others. I almost cried when I delivered that speech in Wyoming in September and for the Cardano Summit, because there was this realization that my child's grown up and it's become so much greater than anything I could be and anything I could ever lead, which is great. I have my flaws as a person, and actually I think it's great that I'm not exactly the most perfect person in the world. The problem when your leader is perfect or, just so competent, everything is so perfect and all these things, is that you never get used to the idea of them not being around. If I do things that irritate the hell out of you, you kind of don't want me there for everything, and you start planning around it and so forth. So actually having an abrasive personality bootstrap something, I think, is a huge advantage for decentralization. Because there's already a built-in market and desire for alternatives and different styles and different approaches. And we've seen that with Fred Gegard at the foundation. There's my counterpart there with Ken Kodama and Emergo and dozens of other leaders that have materialized, hundreds of leaders in the stake pool set that have materialized, some of which vehemently disagree with me and yet are still in the same tent because they recognize that Cardano isn't Charles and the ecosystem is completely independent. So there really doesn't need to be a successor because there is no notion of a CEO or anything like that. It's already been started. You can't stop it. The boulder's rolling down the hill. Just get the hell out of its way. Do you know why Alex Gladstein hates you so much? He criticized you for contributing to CMU to promote a scam or a shitcoin. This is just a great reflection of Alex and how irrational and crazy some of these critics are. The donation to the Carnegie Mellon University had literally nothing to do with Cardano. It was never mentioned once. I delivered a speech. The people there delivered a speech. There was a press release. Zero mention of Cardano because it was a personal donation. That's why it has my name on it. And it's all about the formalization of mathematics. Now, I don't think Alex actually understands a single thing about what that's even about and the point of it and the 100+ year quest that mathematicians have been on to chase this thing, or things like the QED manifesto, or how lean works, or AGDA works, or why these things produce value for science in society. I don't think Alex also understands that people can have different interests. I'd like to resurrect the woolly mammoth, and Colossal's doing a great job there. I do stuff in aquaculture. I do stuff with biotechnology with my brother and dad. We talk about exosomes and other things. Obviously, mathematics was a big part of my life because there was a long period of time that I thought I was going to end up being a professional mathematician. I can't contribute to that space because I'm too scattered and busy. And I was never a particularly good mathematician. So I figured, well, if I could take my resources and give it to people who have focus and who particularly are good mathematicians and give them better tools, as a system level, it'll have a much bigger impact. Now, did Alex care about any of that? No. He's just, it's just co-opting the brand of a great university to promote a shitcoin. It just shows you who he is and how small of a person he is and how narrow he is as a person and how limited his imagination and creativity is. And the only reason we're even talking about him is that he's managed to create some form of following. Okay. But at the end of the day, what has he built? At the end of the day, what does he contribute? What does he actually do? If the mission of the Hoskinson Center is successful, 30 years from now, most of modern mathematics will be mechanized in a way that's machine understandable and accessible from elementary school all the way up to the professional mathematician. And every single proof and attempt to learn about how to write proofs will be AI assisted. And we will be able to create a metacognition amongst all mathematicians of the world to basically work together, collaborate in ways we'd never dreamed possible before, and solve the unsolvable problems like the Riemann hypothesis and the Goldbach conjecture and so forth. That's the mission. Now, maybe we don't get there, but because of that investment, forever, that center is going to be able to fund postdocs and graduate students to pursue that mission. And the output of it will always be, by mandate, Creative Commons open source work. Every year, I'm going to give more money. And over time, the resources of the center will grow to an institute, and it'll have an enormous impact on the professional body of all mathematics. And graduate students of the future, this will be the pedagogy upon which they practice mathematics. What does that have to do with blockchain? Well, we could argue that we could take that technology and make a marketplace for deduction and liberate that process from the academy, and it's commercially useful, and we'll probably think about it. But at the moment, nothing. I've not even thought about it much. I mean, there's the QEditas project that Bill White gave me, and I said, I'll look into it, Bill. And this is kind of the spiritual successor of what Hilbert was trying to do and what Bill was trying to do. And every signatory of the QED manifesto, the people worked on Mizar, the people started with Automath. Alex could ask about that if he was actually curious, if he actually wanted to think about these problems and understand why they're beneficial, at least to mathematicians. He doesn't care because he's a small, sad man who would rather point fingers and attack people and stumble into rooms that he really knows nothing about. Guys, life is short. I've learned that lesson. And as I get older, I learn that, you have finite time to care and to invest and to give people the time of day. The single best piece of advice I can give you about life that I've learned is just don't care. It's like The Simpsons. They say, just don't look, and all the advertisements die. That's the same situation here. If you don't look at the billboard, the message goes away. And if you don't pay attention to the messenger, they fade away too. I can't change who has limited perception and who's a small man, and they can say whatever they want. The dogs bark, but the caravan will always move on. Ever thought about writing a book, setting out your vision? Yeah, I will after it's all done. I'll kind of do a magnum opus post-mortem on what we did. Work our way through it little by little. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How tall are you, Charles? 6 feet tall. Don't know what that is in meters or centimeters. This is a great question. Hi, Charles. Is there any concern or was there prior consideration concerning a possible perceived opinion of Burundi having a negative impact on Cardano? Is that why there's only an MOU? Well, you always start with an MOU when you build a relationship. And then from the MOU, you build a permanent contractual relationship. A B2G2C play takes 3 to 7 years to do, and it depends on the nature of the country. There usually needs to be regulatory reform, a lot of modernization and updates, and boatloads of education just to get to a point where you can deploy something. Guys, I don't care about Burundi, the nation state. The leaders there, they're selected by the people. The people will hold them accountable. I care about the people of Burundi. Those are the people that matter. Just like I don't care about the U.S. government. Who cares about Biden and let's go Brandon and all this stuff? It doesn't matter. What matters is the American people, okay? The people of Germany, the people of the UK. And you ask yourself, are they living well? Are they living the lives they want to live? And are their children going to have the same level of prosperity, more or less? And is what they're doing sustainable? There are 12 million people in Burundi, and there's a lot of beauty there, an incredible culture there that goes back centuries. There's also a lot of dark history of people being victimized, abused, especially by colonial powers. And the people there deserve more and better. And it looks like this government in particular is an ally to that process of improving the human condition. Some governments aren't. For example, the government of North Korea is not, in my view, an ally to its people. It's a cult of personality to aggrandize a singular person, Kim Jong. Every single thing they do is for his benefit at the expense of the people. Some governments do that. Dictators usually do that. And other governments, they want more. They want better. They want to improve the human condition. And they fight hard for it. Now, sometimes they don't get it right. Sometimes they waste resources. There's always divergent opinions, different systems, but at least the desire is there, and they seem to be a willing partner in that. Blockchain, e-governance, these are tools. They're not the only tools. Education is a tool. Improvements in healthcare is a tool. Improvements in water quality is a tool. Supply chain infrastructure for safe food is a tool. Building credible, free, and fair open marketplaces are tools. Sustainable practices in business and in agriculture are tools. Connectivity is a tool. Electrification is a tool. Now, each and every one of us, we have our parts to play in that symphony. And if we all play together, you have a beautiful symphony, and the human condition improves. So I like to believe in the better angels of our nature. I like to believe that people want to be free and people want things to improve. And if invited by a head of state, I will come. And I'll sit down with him, look him in the eyes, and talk to him and to his ministers and talk to the people in the streets and ask them, well, what do you want? And we'll offer, as we say, this whole tour, it's been nothing but learn, listen, and assist in a digital transformation for the benefit of the people of the nations. So that's what we're doing. We're learning about the particular problems. Every country is different. Zanzibar cares a hell of a lot about the blue economy. South Africa cares a lot about different things, especially social injustice at the moment. That's why they have this BE structuring stuff. Burundi has basic infrastructure that needs to be rolled out. And if it's done correctly, it can make them one of the most competitive of all the African nations. Ethiopia has the great deregulation, where they're changing the system from a very old, broken one to a new one. And they're trying to figure a way how to do that while preserving over 2,000 years of history and 120 million people's entrenched interests. Kenya has different concerns. Egypt has different concerns. Every place I go, I listen, we learn, and then we ask them, how can we assist you? And we can be a partner in that respect. And it might take years. It might take decades. But what else am I going to do with my life? Honestly, what else could I do with my life that is any more meaningful and better? Because if we pull this off, what it means is you elevate millions to tens of millions to hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, and you give them a better life than the one that they had before. That's a win for me. And I can't imagine why anybody would wake up and say that's not a life well spent. How can we prevent totalitarian countries from abusing crypto to control their citizens the same way that you can prevent Mark Zuckerberg from abusing the metaverse? It's the same problem. Different structures, different consequences, same problem. Think it through. Charles, can you give a shout out to my brother Dane? Big fans and always enjoy the AMA. Well, James Dean, your brother Dane, good to meet you. Good to know you. And thank you so much for being a member of the community. Bison question, do you market commercially or no? Prices compared to current beef prices? I do not market commercially. Private guided hunts. That's the way it should be. You let them live like proper wild animals. They're eating, grazing off the field, and when their time comes, you shoot them for meat. And then they process them, and it goes straight to the fork, farm to fork. Cleanest meat you can eat, most ethical meat, no slaughterhouses, no cages, no paddocks. They get to be real bison. And you get 600 pounds of meat to 1,000 pounds of meat on a bison. And you can make a lot of jerky. There's a lot of evil in agriculture too, and I wish it was different. Charles, I want to succeed in life. What tip can you give me? I'm only 24 years old. All right, Alexander, I'll give you 3 pieces of advice. First, learn about active listening. This is a piece of advice I didn't take to heart until my 30s, and my chief of staff, Tamara, she reminds me of this every single day, usually very aggressively. And she's usually right, more than I'd like to admit. You got to listen to people. No matter how smart you are, how talented you are, how creative you are, other people there, they're not NPCs, they're not robots, they're human beings, and they have an opinion, they have values. And active listening is not just sitting down and waiting for the other person to shut up so you have your turn to speak. It's trying to understand their values and empathize with their position. If you don't understand a person's values, you find you're talking past each other. You're not arguing about facts, because usually you both agree on reality and facts. You're arguing about the interpretation of them against a value set. Empathy and active listening communication is so important. You learn that, every dimension of your life is going to get better. Your personal relationships, your professional relationships, your career, everything. People just like you. They feel like you make them matter. I wish I had learned that a lot earlier in life. I just didn't, and it was bad for me. 2, learning about time management. Dave Allen's Getting Things Done, Zettelkasten, all these things, how to take good notes, how to manage your time properly. We live in a digital world, Cal Newport, deep work, these types of things. Learning how to segregate your time between the things that you go deep and you focus deep and when you're doing shallow decision-making work or downtime. Big part of that is learning a system that you take to heart, Pomodoro, whatever. There's thousands of them. Find something that works for you, but make sure you integrate that in. You will get your life back. You will get hours every day. Over a year, probably an eighth of a year you get back. Over a lifetime, you get 5-6 years of free time just from that alone. Maybe 10, which means you can master something. Okay? 3rd, mental states, flow training, Stephen Kotler, these types of things. Think about it and train it. I haven't invested as much time as I need to, but I'm a big fan of these things. Meditation, flow states, being able to, when you're in a work endeavor, enter flow and stay in flow and get it done. And also when the job is done, being able to clear your mind, zazen, this clear mind, so important. So mindfulness and flow. You do those 3 things, Alexander, you really commit to those. By the time you're 30, you're going to be a rock star. Everybody's going to be your friend. You can get anything done you want to get done. And when you do it at the level that the top 1% do it. And because you're mindful, you're balanced. You don't emotionally react to things. You're calm. Stuff doesn't bother you. You're just the chillest dude in the room, always. Best of luck. What projects do you have for South America and Colombia? Well, we're going to do the South American tour, circa 2022. Hey, Charles, when's your visit to Ghana? Likely at the graduation of the Ghanaian class. I love Accra, and I have a personal commitment to Accra. I promised Eddie from Good Times over in Osaka, Japan, that I'd go and visit it, and I will. This is a good one right here. Do you really spend a lot of money on luxury? Here's the secret to being a billionaire. I'll open the curtain a little bit for you guys. When you get to a certain level, your wealth actually in luxury tends to actually generate more than you spend on it. So like I have this ranch, but the ranch actually makes a profit. And so when you actually sum it all out, I live for free on that ranch, including property taxes, maintenance fees, and all these other things. So, if you have a house and you Airbnb a few rooms, maybe you get so good at it that you actually make more money than your mortgage, in which case you're living in your own home for free. When you have good people around you, good infrastructure around you, all those things in your life, you start thinking that way. From your transportation to your security to where you live to what you eat, all of these things. Like I like to eat healthy. I can spend a lot of money doing that. So I'm going to build a nice agricultural thing. And I have all these hydroponic growth bays that are coming in. I'm going to switch to some form of a, keto biased, plant-based with some meat diet. I'd like to eat leaner meats. Well, bison. I own a bison ranch. I'm eating my own bison. And I know it's healthy because they're coming from my ranch. They eat the stuff I feed them. And they're the healthiest bison in the world. And if I'm growing my own plants, well, I'm eating my own plants, right? Well, the bison make me money. The plants make me money. So I'm actually eating for free. And yet I'm eating better than most people eat. So that's the kind of key. So you have to think this way. I'm not a flashy guy. This is a $45 Cook Street Hawaiian shirt. I wear jeans that I buy from Walmart or Boot Barn, or someplace like that. I do splurge a bit on boots. I wear Lucchese's boots and these types of things because they're just the damn perfect shoe and they're just so comfortable and I'm on my feet all the time. And I occasionally buy expensive watches and these things, but you'll never usually see me wearing them unless there's very specialized contexts. But generally speaking, almost all the luxuries in my life, I found a way to monetize, or at least they're connected to a particular passion. Now, I do have some historical artifacts that are quite valuable, but I look at that more like I'm a custodian of them. If you buy something that's 1,000 years old or a few thousand years old, the intention is it's going to be around after I die because it was around a lot longer before I existed. So I paid a premium to be a preserver of that history. And when I die, it goes on to the next generation, either to a museum or to someone else that's assigned that same role and responsibility. And they tend to hold value in that respect. And with NFTs, you might even be able to make a profit on them. Who knows? These types of things. So if you want to get out of poverty thinking and you want to get into wealth mindset, that whole rich dad, poor dad thing, in life, you always have to be hustling. You always have to be thinking, what capabilities do I have that if I need more resources, I can monetize those capabilities and share them in such a way that they don't disrupt what I have. Like, there are a lot of people have private jets. If you have a private jet, you should always be, when you're not on it, chartering it. Just like a car with a ride service, on average, you're probably not using it 200, 250 days a year. That one thing can make millions a year just from that, which offsets the cost of ownership and so forth. If you care about environmentalism, if you have a private jet, plant trees to offset the carbon. So you're actually carbon neutral for your setup. You're making the environment a better place and a prettier place for everybody. Growth mindset, wealth generation mindset. Always think this way. Also, you have to buy luxuries when you have a lot of money because the people who make the luxury goods are middle class. And if you don't, they lose their jobs. And you're actually destroying jobs by not consuming them. There are 700 billionaires in the United States. The only ones you hear from are those who need the attention. Well, I don't need the attention. You hear from me. There's probably more than 700, especially with this inflationary monetary policy. Y'all are going to be billionaires one day, just like Zimbabwe. They keep printing money. But you teach their own. I'm here because I love all of you. I have a relationship with you, the community. I miss you guys. You add so much to my life. I can't tell you how much fun it is to see people from all around. I'm here in Ethiopia. This guy flew in from Slovenia, and he gave me a current mask. It's one of the coolest things in the world. I actually took a picture of it. I have no fucking clue how he got it into Ethiopia, and I think the health minister wanted to actually confiscate it for a little bit because they weren't sure what it was. But check this shit out. Look at that. It's like a whole suit. You actually wear them, and it's like a big thing in Slovenia. And he gave me this little package of paperwork about it, what they are. And it's just complete serendipity. It's waiting for me in the hotel lobby. And I meet people all around the world that do this. And that enriches my life. I didn't even know about this. And I collect masks. I like to believe I know a lot about different cultures. This one blindsided me. And now I got to read about it and become like an expert on this thing. And that's like Slovenia, a very small country. And so I meet someone, he shares his culture, his history, his country with me. This job gives me the ability to do that. These AMAs create that relationship. That's why we talk. And we learn from each other. It's so cool. By the way, that guy runs a telco in Sierra Leone. And, they're providing internet to some of the poorest people in the world. To use duckweed in your aquaponics, well, I'd be a quack if I did that. When Kenya? Tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Meow, meow, meow. Updates on the Bison game. Oh, Crypto Bison keeps scaling up. We keep adding to it. The team keeps growing. It's taken a life of its own. Do you use beard oil? I've been offered that many times. People tell me I need to do it. I don't. I should. I just don't put any effort at all into grooming. I'm sorry. Jean-Claude and Jean-Frédéric and Jean-Pierre and Jean-Luc have all invited me to France, but unfortunately, I just cannot make it out there. We will see Roman. He will go there and do things, huh? We did speak a lot of French in Burundi, though. That was fun. Charles, please shout out for the Cheeky Crypto YouTube channel. Big fans. Well, Wayne Copus, Cheeky Crypto YouTube. We're glad that you're fans. Oh my God, yes. Have you seen Dustin's video from Smarter Every Day? Can Cardano help? I watch Smarter Every Day. It's a great YouTube channel. Charles, how many languages do you know? One, barely. Barely speak English. Charles, tell us a joke, okay? Why is the duck the natural enemy of the doctor? Because ducks call them quacks. Will you ever do the Joe Rogan podcast? We'll get around to it. Whenever Joe wants to do it. There's certain things that do need to get done before we do that. Your best conspiracy theory. Yeah, COVID came from a bat. Do you take ivermectin in Africa? Well, I'm vaccinated. I have the 2 Pfizer vaccines, and I've traveled all around Africa. I get 2 COVID tests, one before I travel and one when I enter. I've had 8 COVID tests now. 8. My nose. It's just terrible. Never tested positive once. By the way, been in densely packed rooms in COVID zones. Somehow me and the 16 people traveling with me just never get COVID. Go figure. Guess vaccines work. But, just to be sure, we should take our 17 booster shots and double mask and wear biosuits and social distance and all that stuff. Because who knows? Being a vaccinated person, if I contracted it, I might get a mild flu. Oh, no. That's a fucking joke. Molnupiravir is another example of a joke, very similar to ivermectin. Ivermectin doesn't work, but molnupiravir, that works. And it's $5,000 a treatment. There you go. Emergency use authorization pretty soon. Charles, were you ever offered membership into secret societies? Yes. Turned it down. It's one of those, please tell us more, but not gonna. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we'll probably clip it there. It is getting pretty early. I got a flight tomorrow. Okay, so normally we do the Kiva stuff for microfinance, but I am going to Kenya to meet Possessia for microfinance. So that's like, we'll do the microfinance thing there. We're giving $150,000 that. However, I do have an announcement. So we did make a donation for a school in Zanzibar. I visited the school that World Mobile provided Wi-Fi to, and one of the things we noticed was that the girls at the school don't have proper computing equipment. Their computer room was just really terrible. So what we're going to do is buy a laptop for every girl in that school. I think there's over 300 of them. So we're going to do this nice ruggedized Chromebook, which I think is a great thing, and you can write on the screen and everything like that. So that's the good service for this AMA. It's really amazing what you can do. The price of computing power has fallen so much that something like that used to be like $1 million gig, but I think it could be around 50, 60,000. But it'd be really cool every time we visit a school or something to get a laptop in the hands of every child. It's such a great learning tool. And hopefully once that gets done, we'll take some pictures and we'll see what they're able to do with all of it and what they're able to create with all of it. So that's the microfinance thing for the day. In Kenya, we'll have a lot more to say about MFI. And all throughout 2022, there's going to be a lot of MFI innovation that's occurring with Cardano. And so hopefully Kiva can be part of that, but we're certainly going to blockchain it all up. So that particular school, when you guys saw the pictures of me in Stone Town, I'll tweet something so you can see it. I just can't remember the name of it right now, but wonderful people, really wonderful people. And they're just so filled with love and happiness and good kids. We're also building a kitchen too, because they need a better kitchen. I like food. I'm Italian. We got to have good food. All right. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. This was a lot of fun. I hope the connection held all the way through. As I mentioned, I am in Ethiopia. Internet is difficult here, even with VPNs and special things. So we'll see what the feed looks like. And until next time, I will talk to all of you later. Thank you so much. Cheers.